Hi, it's Kanji Nakatsu again, and the purpose of this video is to bring you up to date on the petition that was circulated to the Government of Canada earlier this year, and to encourage people to write to Minister of Health Patty Hajdu to get ivermectin brought in as a non-prescription drug. We received about almost 5,000 signatures in just 30 days. And as a result of the petition, I received a number of messages by phone and by email uh, saying that they really did support it and really hope that we are successful in getting ivermectin available in Canada. So I hope that many of you will write to Health Minister Patty Hajdu as a result of this. So quite clearly, Canadians want access to ivermectin. And most of what I'm going to say from here on in the video is contained in my letter to Patty Hajdu just recently. So just to remind you what the petition says, it was to the Government of Canada to urgently examine the evidence in favor of ivermectin and give due consideration to making ivermectin available immediately to Canadians as a Schedule II medication which can be obtained directly from a pharmacist. And this was signed by almost 5,000 people in 30 days. And by making this drug a Schedule II medication, it would make it non-prescription, and it would also give the opportunity for the customer to speak to a pharmacist in case they have any questions about ivermectin, and it may also give the pharmacy an opportunity to prevent people from hoarding ivermectin, because they could more or less convince people to buy a reasonable amount rather than buying so much that other people can't buy it. So my feeling is that ivermectin should be a critical complement to the present tools that we have for fighting the present pandemic, not necessarily to replace anything, but it should be there to complement other things. So it offers assistance for treatment all throughout COVID-19. In particular, it's useful as a prophylactic, so it would prevent people from getting COVID, and can act as an antiviral agent in the early stages after the person has been exposed. So it would be very useful for people who are waiting for vaccines. It would offer protection for those who cannot be vaccinated for whatever reason. And on the basis of international data that I've seen and meta-analyses from the UK, from the US, and from Italy and elsewhere, it has the potential to reduce the daily death toll from somewhere in the 50s when I made this slide to less than 20. So it has the potential to really save a lot of lives. So I think that Canada, through the Minister of Health, should make this drug available to all Canadians. Well, there are risks if we do not make ivermectin much more available to Canadians. Risks to their health simply because they don't get it, or they might do other things. So what a lot of people have told me, that they have acquired ivermectin, some via prescription, and under these circumstances the doctor would have to be using this as an off-label treatment. But many, many more have told me that they have acquired a veterinary form of ivermectin. Now, these may be more concentrated than the human forms, simply because sometimes ivermectin is given to horses and cattle, which are quite a bit bigger than humans are. My concern with the veterinary form is that a person might get the wrong dose, or there may be other components in the particular medication. So in calculating the dose for an individual, it's possible that you might get a much higher dose than is necessary, although ivermectin is not reported to be all that toxic. But there are different animal products that contain other things. So there is a paste intended for horses that contains 1.87% ivermectin, and 14.03% praziquantel, which, to the best of my knowledge, has not been tested for COVID-19. In this slide, I just wanted to remind you of the benefits to individuals. Ivermectin reduces the chances of contracting COVID-19 by 88%. That is, by taking it, one's chances of getting it are reduced down to about 12%. In various studies, depending upon the way in which ivermectin was given, it's even been reported to be as much as 100% effective. Dr. Hector Cabello in Argentina used ivermectin liquid and applied it directly to the tongue, and in his large group of healthcare workers, he found almost 100% protection. It reduces the risk of death by anywhere from 65 to 92%. And one of the best meta-analyses or summaries is a British Ivermectin Recommendation Development Panel report, the BIRD report, that was authored by a group led by Dr. Tess Laurie in the United Kingdom. Next point that I wanted to make is that ivermectin can protect populations in addition to protecting individuals. The use of ivermectin has been demonstrated to reduce the burden of the disease on complete populations. So that if it's used very widely, it reduces the incidence of COVID-19 very substantially. So a really good example is in the case of the country of Peru in South America, where they started to use ivermectin very widely, and as a result of that, they got a massive decrease in the number of cases and a number of deaths. And this has been reported in a number of different journals, but one of them would be the American Journal of Therapeutics, and the authors of this is Corey and his group at the Frontline COVID Care Alliance in the United States. What I'd like to address next is the differences between vaccination and ivermectin when variants are encountered. Vaccines generate antibodies that recognize particular structures associated with the virus. If the structures change, then the virus could escape. In contrast, ivermectin would recognize a structure in the host, that is us, and this is not affected by viral evolution. This can be seen in this next slide. The left side shows how a mutation to the spike protein could render the virus unrecognizable by the vaccine-generated antibodies. In contrast, ivermectin on the right side can bind to the host important site, and this is not affected by mutations to the virus. Well, now that I've presented the argument for making ivermectin non-prescription, the question is, well, how do we go about doing it? Section 8 in Health Canada's guidance document tells us how one can make a prescription drug non-prescription through an exception. So an example is the flu vaccine, where greater availability better serves the public, and obtaining individual prescriptions was not practical for the healthcare system. Well, by analogy, ivermectin is greatly needed, and prescriptions are not really practical considering its safety. Therefore, I think that ivermectin should be converted to a non-prescription drug, just the way that flu vaccines are. With the flu vaccine, you don't have to have a prescription. You just show up at a clinic where the flu vaccine is being delivered. You show your health card and you get vaccinated. I think the same thing ought to apply to ivermectin. If it's made non-prescription, just go to your pharmacist, ask for it, and you should be able to purchase it. Ivermectin is very safe. In fact, it's far safer than most over-the-counter Canadian drugs. Billions of people have been treated with ivermectin since 1992, and just 5,252 reports of adverse effects have been made to Vigiaccess, an organization that collects adverse effects of various drug preparations worldwide. Acetaminophen, since 1992, has had 159,000 adverse effect reports, 30-fold more than ivermectin. Currently, patients with mild COVID are often sent home with instructions to take Tylenol and return if your breathing becomes labored. If ivermectin were readily available, they could be sent home, instructed to purchase some ivermectin, which would probably cure them. And there is a US precedent for making ivermectin non-prescription. A product called Slice Lotion, which contains 0.5% ivermectin, was converted to over-the-counter status in 2020, October 27th. Well, I've mentioned efficiency by saving doctors time. So with non-prescription ivermectin, we could save thousands of hours of doctors' time because it would be unnecessary for them to write prescriptions. In fact, most doctors know little about ivermectin simply because there is very little parasitic disease in Canada, and as a result they are reluctant to prescribe it. Many doctors are also afraid of the penalties for prescribing ivermectin, in spite of the fact that Health Canada has stated that healthcare practitioners may prescribe drugs, including ivermectin, outside their indications of use. So this is what's called off-label use. So what about the logistics of getting ivermectin into Canada, even if it has been made non-prescription? So one of the difficulties that we have right now, there's only one supplier of ivermectin tablets in Canada, and that supplier has allowed the drugs to lapse, making it widely unavailable, and it's being back-ordered until December, to the best of my knowledge. So if Health Canada were to convert ivermectin non-prescription status, we would have to have generic companies filling the shortfall. But they certainly should be invited to fill the shortfall. They could import the active ingredient and tablet here. But I've also learned recently that Portugal has approved the use of ivermectin, and there is a company in Portugal making tablets there. Since we have a mutual recognition agreement with Portugal and the rest of the European Union, it may be possible to import the tablets, the finished product, directly into Canada without the necessity of Canadian companies to make a product line specifically for ivermectin. This is where I'm asking you to do something. Please write to the Honourable Patty Hajdu, the Minister of Health for Canada, at the address listed here. Also write to your MP using first name dot surname at the Parliament of Canada. And if you're a patient requiring ivermectin, either for treatment or for prophylaxis, let me know, and I'll try to match you up with a doctor and pharmacies that have ivermectin. So if there are pharmacies out there that would like me to have their address, please let me know. And if there are doctors out there who are willing to prescribe ivermectin until it becomes non-prescription, please let me know as well. And I will try to match up the doctors and the patients, but I will not disclose the names of the doctors publicly. I'll just keep them in my little file here. So my address is my email down there below, if you're comfortable doing that. If you want a little bit more privacy, then you can send it to me, care of General Delivery, Post Office Box 2280, Kingston, Maine, 120 Terrence Street, Kingston, Ontario, K7L 4V5. Thank you very much, and just remember that while we dither, people die.